All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, salatu salamu ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. So we begin as we should and as we always do, with the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the especially merciful. We ask Him and Him alone to send His peace and blessings upon our dear and beloved teacher, leader, and guide, and the best of examples, Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his pure family, his good companions, and all of those who would attempt to follow in their footsteps until the day that we meet our Creator. Allahumma ameen. Brother, may Allah have mercy on you. Please come up to that table needs to be filled. Always, always. I'm gonna always tell you, and I'm gonna always tell the same corny joke. Rosa Parks already went through it. We don't need to sit in the back. Yeah. No. So, inshallah. Wa alaikum salam barakatuh. I'm sorry? Ila khair kusiyam. No, just leave here, inshallah, and then we'll check if they. Allah yaftah alayk. Could you please shut the door, brother? Jazakallah khair. So, inshallah, what I would like for you to do first and foremost, anything that is not you or conducive to you taking notes. So the only thing that should be in front of you are pens, pencils, some writing utensil, and a notebook. That's it. Your phones, as I already asked, and I'm just reminding you, please put them in your backpacks, not in your hoodies, not in your thobes, under your khimal, etc., but in your backpack or purse or tote or what have you. So I'm going to trust y'all that it's done. Alhamdulillah, y'all are old enough, right? You have abos and hoyos, so I'm trusting you that that's done. Tayyib. Inshallah, as we mentioned, we have two different subjects, and they are what, Sheikh, that we're covering in this class? And hadith. No, good. So, inshallah, I had initially chosen a book for the portion that I wanted to introduce the science and the topic of tafsir to you all. And I'm running what they call an audible. Y'all know what an audible is? You might play football? No? Right? It's usually when coach is called to play, but quarterback is going to run a different play. He's got to change things up in the middle. Right? There's another book that I decided would be more appropriate for your level based on what I saw since I've been with y'all a couple of weeks now. And it's more straightforward and doesn't have excess or extra information. It's just got what we need, straightforward, right? So that you can know the main moving parts when it comes to tafsir, what you need to know about it. And then tomorrow, bi'ithnillah, we're going to jump right into the tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah. Tayyib. And then just so you know, over the course of the semester, we're probably going to be covering, give or take, maybe 12 or 13 surah, right? Surah is the plural of surah, which means chapter. We'll cover probably 13 or so chapters from Juz Amma. Juz Amma, however, has 37 chapters. That's 37 surah. But we're only going to be covering about, like I said, 13, if that, of those chapters, all right? You might be given assignments and expected to read other chapters that we don't read in class, and you might have homework on those. But as I mentioned, y'all are old enough, and I think you're appropriate for your level. So you might be given a reading. Again, like I said, it's not in the class, meaning like we don't discuss it in the class, but you might have to read it, and then you'd have questions and homework. And then maybe afterwards we might discuss it, but it wouldn't be like a lesson in the class, then homework, right? It might be you do a reading, Zakaria, on your own at home, questions are on that reading, and then the following week, the following day, you might have reading. Does that make sense, y'all? Khalas. So we're going to start with tafsir. It's appropriate. It's the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or revolving around the speech of Allah azza wa jal. So we'll start with that, and then in the second period, we'll be doing hadith, and I'll explain when we get to that. If you have any questions regarding homework, regarding what we're doing with the Google Classroom, etc., I humbly request that you leave that to the end before we go on break, because I'll always try to put a break in between the two subjects. Ask me then. Please don't ask me in the middle of the class right now, what's the password? Can I join? What was the homework, etc. Please don't ask those questions during the class. If you have a question about what we're talking about, I didn't explain something clearly, something's confusing, you just need some clarification, that's no problem. You can stop me, interject me, although I would prefer if you just write it down and then ask at the end. But if it's for clarification, then that's no problem. Play it. Any questions? Play it. So what are we going to do right now today? What we're going to do, and I know we discussed and touched on it, but like I said, I'm running an audible. We're going to go through what is tafsir, both the linguistic and technical definition, the importance of tafsir, right? Namely from a particular scholar and sheikh, his name is Imam al-Suyuti, rahimahullah. He probably wrote the most important work on ulum al-Quran, or the sciences of the Quran. Very important work. But we have some statements from him where he kind of summarized the importance of tafsir, and then also the methodology. And by methodology, we mean if you wanted to do tafsir of the Quran, what would you need to do, or how would you do that? Like, what would be step 1, step 2, step 3, and I've arrived at a tafsir of the Quran, right? How do you do that? That's what we mean by methodology. Which also Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah, we have some quotes from him touching on that, and then touching a little bit on each of those steps in that methodology or the way of making tafsir. All right, does that make sense, y'all? When I say methodology or how to make tafsir? So what I mean is, if you took the Quran, you yourselves right now, and you were like, boom, and somebody was reading Surah Al-Muddathir. Who was reading it? Is that you, Zakaria? Right? If you were like, okay, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'anzir, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahir, wa rujza fahjur. And you were like, okay, I know what Ya ayyuha, that means, oh you, right? Or you're like, but this word muddathir, I don't know what that means, right? And then it says and then you read the translation and it says somebody wrapped up. And you wanted to know, well, who's this one that's wrapped up? Who's Allah talking about? When he says, oh, you who's wrapped up. What does that mean? I don't understand. Who's wrapped up? Does that mean everybody who's wrapped up? If I'm at home and I'm wrapped up, does that mean Allah's talking to me? What does that mean? Then you would say, okay, I want to know the explanation and what is meant by that. Qum fa'anzir, stand up and warn. Stand up, where should I stand up right now? And warn who? And what should I warn them about? Again, you want to know what that means, who's it talking about? Where would you go to find that out? Exactly, nobody has an answer. That's why we have to learn this. That's why we go to the tafsir. And then even if you did tafsir, different people have different ways of making tafsir. Some of them are correct, and some of them are not, right? So what is that? What is the way, the proper way, so we can come to a proper understanding of the Quran? Clear? Khalas. All right, so how we're going to do this, we're going to be doing some reading, y'all. And inshallah, I'm going to need your help in that, right? I have found trying to leave up to people's devices. You might be here a while because all of you are so humble and have so much humility. You don't want to put yourself out there. So I'm going to just call on people, all right? I do anticipate and expect everybody to participate. So there is no such thing as just like, I'm just be here quiet. But everybody's got to read. Okay? Okay, does everybody understand that? No, everybody. Do we all understand? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. It's good. So, inshallah. Zakaria, could you go ahead and read, please? Starting from the beginning. And when you do, Zakaria, make sure that you start by making dua for the author. By the way, the author here, his name is Furhan Zubayri. He's the author of this book that we're reading. Just say, قال المصنف, which means the author said, rahimahullah, right? And rahimahullah is similar to ila akhir kusya. May Allah have mercy on you. قال المصنف rahimahullah. The author said, may Allah have mercy on him, and then start reading. And that's for everybody each time. Every time if I call on you to read, you're going to start by saying, قال المصنف رحمه الله. And that's only until everybody gets it. So, go ahead. What is the most important science, y'all? Tafsir. Now, tafsir of the Quran. Now, before we get into what the author says and what he thinks, why? Why do you think tafsir is the most important? There we go. Why is tafsir the most important? And there are multiple sciences. There's hadith, there's usul al-hadith, known as mustalah hadith. There is aqidah, which is theology, like what Muslims believe. There is the Arabic language, balagha. There is nahu, sarf, etc. Right? These are all different sciences. Why is tafsir the most important? Yes.
Because it's like learning or like understanding like the direct words that came from Allah.
The direct words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nah, good. Anybody else? Jazakallah khair. Halas, no problem. Yes, brother. No problem. The author said, tafsir, most important subject. Why? Why do you think that is? You on your own. Sister, why do you think that is? Ritaj? Yes, Ritaj. Why is that? I didn't hear what he said. Okay, what other reason? Yeah. What other reason could tafsir of the Quran be the most important subject? This is important for you to think about. You want to get out of the habit of turning your brain off or putting your brain on cruise control and waiting for the teacher to call on you by name. And then when everybody else is thinking and when everybody else is talking or not, your brain is just on idle. You know, when you turn the car on, but you're not driving the car, it's not on drive and it's just sitting there, on not neutral. If you turn the car, like you forgot something in the house and you left the car on in park, the engine is on, but it's not like vroom, and it's not until you put it in drive, then you put some gas in it, then it's 30, 40, and you can hear the engine working. Many of y'all, your brain is just, you're waiting. Even though the question is asked from everybody, y'all, many people, I'm not pointing no fingers right now, but many people do that. I do not want that in my class. So I might ask any of you, sister, why? Why is Quran, tafsir of the Quran, most important subject? No, the other sister behind her. Yes. Everybody should be thinking about it right now. Why do you think that is? And you have a good start as well. He said, because it's explaining the direct words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a good start. What are the benefits of knowing and understanding the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes. So we can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No doubt, if you know what he says, right? What he wants, what he doesn't want, what he likes, what he doesn't, what he determines to be important, what he determines to be right and wrong, no doubt you're getting a better understanding of who he is, and as such, consequently, you're getting closer to him. That makes sense. Jazakallah khair. Yes. So you can act upon it, right? So you can act upon it. Good. Jazakallah khair. Yes. So that you can share with others. Barakallah feek. And more importantly, right, before you even do that, to learn for yourself. Ahsant. Tayyib. Yes, sister. The whole, I'm not going to make eye contact. That don't work. Come on. Follow in the footsteps of. Interesting. So he said the Quran, Sudais, are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. Yes? Would y'all agree? She just said studying tafsir is going to help you follow in the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Explain that. Ah, da, 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 da. Unless you got on a deep purple hijab, that's the only person you should be talking. Jazakallah khair. Go ahead, sis. You're on the right track. I just want to know, what do you mean by that? I want you to elaborate. Because on the surface, look, sister, on the surface, we said they're the words of Allah. How is following the words of Allah going to help you follow Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Okay, elaborate, continue, elaborate. By the way, she's right, y'all. She's right. I want you to explain that. Sister, are you not sure what you meant by that? I'm just asking for you to explain what you said. So look. Don't turn your brain off. Hey, look at me. When you do that, you're turning your brain off. Do you know why? Instead of thinking for yourself, you're looking at other people, right, to give you an answer. That means you're turning your brain off when you do that. Don't do that, right? I'd rather sit here in awkward silence and you thinking and you're sweating and you're thinking, if you didn't come up with nothing, you didn't come up with nothing. No problem. Better that than you be like, just tell me the answer. All right? All right. This is important. Look it. If a non-Muslim asks you a question, what you gonna do? You gonna sit there in awkward silence? We in a classroom with Muslims, and we talking about Islam, right? Even if you give me a wrong answer, that's no problem, because I'm only asking what you think. So technically, is there a wrong answer if it's what you think? Technically, there's no wrong answer. So no problem. Sis, she said, follow the Quran, why it's the most important tafsir of the Quran, excuse me, most important subject, helps you follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why do you think that is? And I'm telling you, she's right. Why would you think that is? How does that help you follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And she did say, because Allah gave it to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which so far, so good. That's good. Okay, but what's that got to do with me following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No. This sister. Who followed it? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Halas? All right, so let's see what the author has to say. Go ahead, Zakaria. Tafsir is the key. Actually, I'll go and then y'all can read the other parts. As mentioned earlier, the recitation of the Quran itself is a great act of worship. So reciting the Quran, what y'all were doing earlier, when you were reading the Quran and you were practicing for your ashar, etc., that is an act of worship, which is why you should take it seriously, which is why you shouldn't have your phone, which is why you shouldn't be talking and having side conversations while you're doing it, because you are engaged actively in an act of worship, in ibadah. Imagine when you're praying salah, right? Are you allowed to talk when you pray salah? Are you allowed to laugh? Matter of fact, you're not even allowed to fidget. Huh? You're not even supposed to do this when this is from what's called the makruhat, those things that are disliked when you're praying. But you see people do it all the time, right? Y'all hear people do that when they do it? Or you see people do this, keep straightening out their clothes, especially if they're wearing the thing, right? Phone might ring, they might reach their hand, they're like, oh, I'm praying. So they don't look at it, but you're not even supposed to do that. Why is that? Because it is a sacred act of worship, right? The Quran and the recitation of it, the memorization of it is an act of worship. It's an ibadah, right? But the Shaykh, he's going to go on. Go ahead, sis, brother. Oh, it was me who was reading, my fault. So he says, it's an act of worship that carries a lot of rewards, virtues, and blessings. However, the actual purpose of the Quran is to think, reflect, and ponder. To think, reflect, ponder, and contemplate over its meaning. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Allahumma salli ala Muhammad in Surah Sa'ad, a blessed book that we have revealed to you, O Muhammad, that you might reflect upon its verses, and that those of understanding would be reminded. كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب. Right? Allah says expressly, it is a sacred book that we've sent, or a blessed book that we've sent to you, so that you can reflect on it, think about it. That is the real purpose behind the Quran. That is the real purpose, right? You memorizing it and you go on Saturdays and Sundays so you can right? That's so you can hold on to it, right? But the whole reason why you even want to hold on to it, memorize it, and you're engaged in that, ultimately is that what? So that you can reflect on it and think on it. And why would that be necessary? Why would you need to think on it, reflect on it, contemplate? What's the benefit of that? What is that supposed to lead to naturally? You reflecting and thinking about the Quran, what should that lead to? Sumaya. A better understanding. Okay, but then what does a better understanding should that naturally lead to? So you can just say, I that's deep. I really understand how deep the Quran is, mashallah. So you can what? Continue learning, and you just keep learning and keep learning, keep learning. And once you put it together, then what? What is it ultimately all supposed to lead to? Huh? I can't hear you. Understanding Islam. Why would you want to understand Islam? Okay, and as a Muslim who understands Islam, what do you naturally do next? Naturally. Yes. Teach it before teaching. Huh? Implement it. You should do it yourself. The point of reflection, the point of contemplation, the point of you thinking about it is, how does this apply to me? What does this mean in my life? What should I be doing? This is now I understand it. Now I have more knowledge. Now I can act according to knowledge. I can act according to what I know. Not just because my Abu and Hoya are Muslim. Not just because my people are Muslim. Not just because somebody else told me that's what I'm supposed to do. But because of what I know and what I understand. Based on knowledge. It leads to next what? Is actions. And then, of course, you're acting on it yourself. And then just like the sister Ritaz, she just mentioned, alhamdulillah, which is what? Implement. That you're going to teach it and share with others. And if I'm not mistaken, my man over here, what's your name, Akhi? Yes. Bilal, he mentioned a little bit earlier too, right? Knowledge and teaching others. Play it. All right, so keep it moving. Anyways, the only way to contemplate and reflect over it, its words and meanings, is to actually know what those words and meanings are. And that is learned through tafsir. That is why learning tafsir is considered to be an obligation upon every Muslim. What did that just say? What did it just say, y'all? What did it just say, Abdurrahman? Is he not Abdurrahman? Okay. What did it just say? What? Huh? Akhi, take the chair, come sit up here. Now, what did it just say? I'm asking all of you. I'm not just asking him, I'm asking all of you. Learning tafsir is an obligation on who? Everybody. This is important. When have y'all ever heard that? Have you ever heard that before? No. I'm certain that you haven't. 90% of you, I'm sure you haven't heard that before. But all of you should know some tafsir, because he goes on to say, right? it's to varying degrees. That is why learning tafsir is considered to be an obligation upon every Muslim in varying degrees. It doesn't mean we all need to be experts. Doesn't mean we all need to be experts, but there's some level of tafsir you got to know. Whether it's the teacher, the ma'alin, the sheikh, the hoya, the college student, the high school student, the middle school student, all of us are supposed to know some tafsir. And then the more you have responsibility, the more you're a teacher, you have some leadership, mentor, sheikh, imam, etc. The more you go up, the more you need to know. Does that make sense, y'all? But this is very important because oftentimes there are many, especially in a ma'had and especially in a duksi, where that might come and creep into your mind, and it might have even been sitting there for a while, the idea that all I need with the Quran is I just got to read it, finish it, and then my parents can get off my back, and that's where it ends. That's where it ends. And the most that I have relationship with the Quran is because I got to pray 5 times a day. So I'll sprinkle a little bit here and there, some Quran in my life through my 5 daily prayers. But other than that, that's it. And it's not. It is more than that. Every Muslim should have a relationship with the Quran. And that starts with tafsir. Tayyib. So now he goes on. One way to look at that is that the Quran is a treasure chest full of guidance and wisdom. The key to unlocking that chest is tafsir. The more tafsir you know, the more you get to dig in and take out from those treasures. The less you know, the less you get to treasure. And I'm sorry, was I not clear about you moving up here? My brother, if you could, take the chair and your stuff and come sit up here. Jazakallah khair. Tayyib. So first thing, and I've highlighted what you need to write or what you need to take note of. I've highlighted what you need, right? So number one, linguistically, the definition of tafsir is that it is a verbal noun. Don't worry about that part. You don't need that. But tafsir, right, is from the word or the verb fassara, which means, and this is what I want you to write, to explain, to expound, make clear, or interpret. To explain, expound, make it bigger. Of course I can. Linguistically, the definition of tafsir, it's a verbal noun from the word fassara, and it means what? To explain, to expound. Oh, no problem. Fa, sin, ra. The sin has a shadda, and then that other part that's after it, those are just parentheses. How are we doing, Arma? We good? Alhamdulillah. Can I go on? All right. Means to explain, expound, make clear, or interpret. So the word tafsir means what? The explanation. So now it's like a summarized definition or linguistic definition. It means the explanation or interpretation of something, right? So if you're a hoya or you're abo now or you're ummah, if they ask you, what are you doing? You were there for 2, 3, 5 hours with the sheikh. What class do you have? Tafsir. They say, tafsir, what is that? Oh, is that the translation? You say, no. It is the explanation or interpretation of something. Obviously, not just something, the Quran, excuse me. That's what the word tafsir means linguistically. All right. Now, the red part, that's the technical definition. All of y'all in the back table, can you see clearly? Sister, can you see clearly? In the back, in the middle, in that last table. You can see it? Just come up here. Yes. Yes. Sis, can you see back there? Clearly? Okay, khalas. Now, as far as the technical definition, it refers to the science by which the Quran is understood, its meanings are explained, and its rulings and wisdoms are derived. That's it. It's the science of the Quran, or by which the Quran is understood, its meanings are explained, and its rulings and wisdoms are derived. That is the definition, the technical definition of tafsir. Make sense? Sis, we good? Sister, we good? You. Allahu Akbar. Sister, you. You, sis, are you okay? Yes. Because I don't see a pencil in your hand. I don't see a... You're not taking note? No, not you, her. Yes, you, sister. Okay, so... Okay, so that being the case, you're gonna have to watch this. So I record this and then I'm gonna upload it and send a link, right? But you're gonna have to get the note somehow. All right, so if you can get it from somebody else or somebody else can help her out. All right, we're gonna keep it moving though. So now as far as the importance of tafsir, now this is where I want y'all to kick in and start helping with the reading, inshallah. Sumaya, if you can go, please. What? Oh, قال المصنف رحمه الله. Hold on. It says لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. نعم. That's the ayah. Go ahead, read it. Had we? From ignorance to knowledge, from disgrace to honor, and from burdens to life, you understand the words that sound the great energy of the sun to send out in the middle of the night, secretly with the truth and prophet. Stop right there. Bilal, if you could, please, go ahead. Khalas. Don't even worry about that. Don't even worry about that. Just go ahead and read. These are all down to constitution. The same words that conquered the heart of Umar will be unlocked, and burden the words will be assessed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Into ones of his most stalwart warriors. The same words that when the verses prohibiting alcohol were revealed, almost instantly the streets of Medina were flowing with the alcohol discarded by the companions. The science of tafsir is meant to explain and open the power of Allah's words. All right, stop right there. So now, Imam as-Suyuti rahimahullah, this is a quote from him where he's going to mention 3 reasons that explain or the importance of the science of tafsir. How many, y'all? All right, 3. All right, so I'm going to read it quickly just because I don't want to fall behind. But I'll point out what you need to know. All right. So he said, Imam as-Suyuti rahimahullah, he captured the importance of tafsir beautifully when he wrote, the science of tafsir is the most honorable of all the sciences for 3 reasons. The first reason, so that's what you need to write. Reason number 1, with respect to its topic. Number 1, because as Ustad Sudais mentioned earlier, it deals with the speech of Allah. That's reason number 1. So you were right on the money, right? So reason number 1, it deals with the speech of Allah. This is why this is the most important and significant of the Islamic sciences. Number 1, the reason is it deals with the speech of Allah. And what is that? It's which contains every kind of wisdom and virtue. It contains pronouncements about what has passed, reports of what will happen, yani prophecies of the future. and judgments concerning what happens between people, meaning the people of righteousness and those who are who choose not to follow the guidance, right? What happens to them? Between people, its wonders never cease, right? So, in summary, reason number one, it deals with the speech of Allah, and then everything else after that is just explaining that. Right? He's just saying what it does. But what I want you to make sure you write down is simply it deals with the speech of Allah. And then what is the speech of Allah? It tells about prophecies of the future. It tells about the ancient past, etc. Right? That you don't have to write all that down. It's good for you, but you don't have to. Sayyid Abdul Rahman, khalas. Number two, the second reason is with respect to its goal. So the goal of it is to lead mankind to the firm handhold of Allah and to true happiness that does not end. And what does that mean by true happiness that does not end? What do you think that means? I'm asking you all as a class, what does that mean? True happiness that does not end. Eternal. Huh? Jannah, paradise, right? The firm handhold of Allah, right? And the happiness that never ends, which is paradise. So that's number two. Reason number three. The third reason is with respect to the great need for this science. Every aspect of this religion and this world in the near future, the near or distant future, is in need of the sciences of the Sharia and knowledge of the religion. This knowledge can only be obtained by understanding the book of Allah. Right? So the part that you need to write, every aspect of this religion and this world in the near or distant future is in need of the sciences of the Sharia. That means fiqh, usul al-fiqh, mustalah, everything. Aqidah, all of those things, we need the tafsir of the Quran in order to do that. Because when it comes to our belief in Allah, the first place we're going to look for is in the Quran. If we belief in the angels, belief in the books, belief in the prophets, belief in etc., etc., all those things, first place we got to go to is where? The Quran. First place you got to go to the Quran. And tafsir does what? Astaghfirullah. Don't you dare say translate. The tafsir does what? Explains the Quran. It explains the meaning of the Quran and interpretation of the Quran. All right? Play him. If you wanted to know how to pray, how to fast, how to make hajj, giving charity, where would we start? First place we're going to go. The Quran. And how are we going to understand that when we read those ayat? How are we going to understand it, everybody? With what? Tafsir of the Quran. Play it. So now, are there any questions before we move on? Number three, every aspect of the religion needs tafsir. Every aspect of the religion needs tafsir of the Quran. Okay, can we go on, y'all? We good? Tell us. So the next thing is the sources of tafsir. Where do we get tafsir from? If we were to sit down and read the Quran and try to interpret it and try to explain it as the science of tafsir is, how do we do that? Or excuse me, what tools do we need in order to do that? The tools that we need in order to do that. What are we going to use? So, this is not a reading class. I'm just going to go ahead and read and make it quicker and easier. Sources of tafsir. Part of the responsibility of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was to recite the Quran to the people and to explain its meaning. The Prophet ﷺ would teach them both the words and meaning of the Quran. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Ali Imran, certainly did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confer the favor upon you, or upon the believers, excuse me, when he sent among them a messenger from themselves to recite reciting to them his verses and purifying them and teaching them the book and wisdom, although they had been before in manifest error. And that ayah is لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expressly explains and tells us that the responsibility and the job of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what that is, and that is a tremendous blessing upon us as believers. And that responsibility that he has is that to recite the Quran to them so that they know the words. And then not only that, but he purifies them and he teaches them the book and the wisdom, meaning that he's not just simply memorizing the words so he can finish his ashar, that he's not just memorizing the words so he can say, I finished the book one time, but so that they can what? لِيُزَكِّيهِمْ, purify them. And you cannot be purified by the Quran if you don't know what it means. And you cannot learn the wisdom of the Quran if you don't know what it means. And you cannot, right, follow it properly as it should be followed, right? Unless what? Unless you know its meanings. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, part of his express, it's like in his job description, is to share with the people. Because before that, they were in what? فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, right? Which is clearly wrong, off the path, misguided. Without Islam, we would all be guided. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions in a hadith Qudsi that Allah mentions in Sahih Muslim, right? كل يا عبادي كلكم ضال إلا من هديت فاستهدوني أهدكم. O my servants, all of you are misguided except for those whom I guide. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, right? Similarly to here, right? That we fi ضلال مبين, unless Allah guides us. And a part of the way that he guides us is through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sharing and teaching the people and guiding the people with? With the what, y'all? With the Quran. Tayyib. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we set down the clear proofs and written ordinances, meaning the rules and regulations, and we reveal to the messenger that you may make clear to the people what was sent down to them, and that they might give thought, meaning that they might reflect. So the Prophet ﷺ not only taught the words of the Quran to the people, but he also explained their meanings in details. And I want you to think about that in contrast to how long you've been studying Quran. I want you to think in contrast. The Prophet ﷺ was teaching people the words, لِيَتْلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ. He was teaching them the words, and then he was also teaching them the meaning in detail. And I want you to contrast that with your experience in Duksi and your experience all these years with the Quran. And does that mesh up with what we're reading right now? The companions had another advantage. During the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, they witnessed the revelation of the Quran with their own eyes. They were aware of the background, the circumstances, reasons, and even events surrounding revelation. This is known as asbab an-nuzul, the reason for the revelation coming, right? Because we said last class, did the Prophet ﷺ receive the book as one volume, like what we have right now? How did he receive the Quran, y'all? In pieces. For how long? Over a period of 23 years. And when would he receive that revelation? Randomly? It's just Tuesday and he's just like, yeah, I'm getting some revelation right now. No, well, when he needed it, when they had questions, when they needed clarification, right? When something's happening in the life of the Prophet ﷺ or the companions, to solve problems, to answer questions, to grant them guidance, and I said yes, whatever they're dealing with, then they would receive revelation. Does that make sense, Abdurrahman? What makes sense? I know what I said. I want you to tell me what I said. How come? Very good. Ahlan wa sahlan. or accent, excuse me. All right, so we keep it moving then. The companions had another, oh, we said that already. The Arabic. All right, another thing. The Arabic of the Quran, or the Arabic of the Quran, was their native language. Again, this is something is that the case for most of us? It's not our native language. So that's an advantage that they had. The Quran was their native language. They understood the usage of the words, their connotations, and various nuances of meanings. What does connotations mean, y'all? Huh? Your tone? That's intonation. You said what now? The implied meanings. So, for example, I could say, I'm elated. What does that mean, y'all? If I said I'm elated? Huh? It means I'm really happy. It means I'm joyous. It means I'm overjoyed. All of those words would be appropriate to say that's what elated means. Whereas if I said I'm happy, that doesn't mean I'm overjoyed. I'm just happy, right? So in the word elated, there are more other implied meanings and connotations. That's what connotations are, right? There are other implied meanings that go into that one word. Does that make sense, yeah? Let's keep moving. So they would understand that. They would understand that. They would understand if it had multiple meanings in a given for given words. If any of the companions face some difficulty in understanding the Quran, they would simply turn to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Thus, as long as the Prophet ﷺ graced this world with his noble presence, understanding and interpreting the Quran did not pose much of a problem. So in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, right, he was essentially the final authority. They would read the Quran, they generally understood its meaning because it's their language. But if there was something that wasn't clear to them, they didn't understand, what would they do? Just go to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's it. After the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam left this world, his companions who learned the Quran and its meaning directly from him, they took on the responsibility of explaining the Quran. They taught the Quran to their students, the generations known as the successors. And the successors, what is the generation of the companions? That's called what in Arabic? The Sahaba. The companions, that term is known as Sahaba, right? Which is plural of Sahabi. And a Sahabi is what? Who remembers what the definition of Sahabi is? Go ahead, Sheikh. Who met the Prophet ﷺ while he was alive. They believed in him and they became Muslim. So not when he died, but when who dies? No, not when the Prophet ﷺ died. When they died. Someone who met the Prophet ﷺ, believed in him, and died believing in him. That is the definition of Sahabi. If you don't have that written down, you should write that down. That's important for you to know. Who is a companion? Someone who met the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, believed in him, right? And you could say believed in him in his lifetime and died believing in him. Those three things qualify someone to be a companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Whether they were kids, 12 years old, 10 years old, 9 years old, 7 years old, or they were old. Doesn't matter. All right? Now we're almost done and we're about to take a break. Question? All right.
When the Sahabis like they have the willpower, how much do you all be control?
Majority of it.
Oh,
Excuse me, that's after the campaigns. But I would say a huge swath. So during the time of, it was actually in your notes. You said during the time of like Umar,
yeah.
they expanded, and then into Uthman's time, Egypt, Syria, Russia, China, portions of China. Obviously not all of Russia, not all of China, but portions of it. Yeah. And even further in, if you go to like Muhammad al-Fatih, he went all the way to France. So that means they were pushing into Europe. North Africa. Yeah, so that they had huge swaths. So at the height of the Muslim empire, and not just the companions, if you ask that, then there is a point where they were ruling majority of the world. Yes.
So they had a bigger reach if you want to get to England Empire, start the time.
At one point, yes. But not like not simultaneously or at the same time. But yes, compared, yeah. Like at their height versus at their height of this empire versus this height of the height of this empire, then yes, that could be said, yeah. No. And there's differences and explanation as to why that is. Not only why that is, but also how they ruled, right? And how they dealt with those, different places that were under their charge. You raise your hand. You got another question?
Yeah. Like, did they go to these places and conquer, or they wait for them to attack and then they conquer?
Do you mean like, did they go on the offensive?
Yeah. They go around and like,
Yes. And like conquer lands?
explore and conquer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, they would go and fight and might be preemptively. It's not only like in defense. So it would be yes to spread their lands. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Any other questions? No. And I know that might be a surprise for some, because there are some people who try to create the narrative that Islam does not have jihad, offensive jihad, or that jihad is only in defense of Islam. And that is not the case. Ultimately, it is defending the goals of Islam, right? Even if they were to attack preemptively, meaning on the offense. But it's not that there's only defensive fighting in Islam. There is offensive, right? Because it is an empire. And an empire, right, has interests, goals, resources, and things that it needs, right? So yeah, because ultimately the goal is to spread Islam and stretch, and if not spread Islam, to extend its reach where people have access and availability to hear the message of Islam unimpeded and unhindered, right? So even if, for example, they come to a place and they don't accept Islam, they at least now won't have someone who's hostile, who is suppressing and pushing down Islam, right? So like, for example, you have during like the Spanish Inquisition, where anybody who wasn't Catholic and anyone who didn't belong, who wasn't Christian, right, they like burned them at the stake. Jewish people, people of different Christian denominations, including Muslims, right? So in that place, then whether they attack Muslim lands or not, that place might be open for, to be attacked. Why? Because they're suppressing, right, the truth and not allowing people to have to hear the truth, right? I'm with him. But I think that answers your question, though. No? Tell us. All right. So now, as far as the proper methodology, right? What would be step one? What would be step two when it comes to interpreting or explaining the meaning of the Quran? Again, we come back to Imam As-Suyuti, rahimahullah. Or excuse me, I almost forgot this part. We were saying the companions, excuse me. They were teaching their students. Then we explained the word Sahabi. And then they would teach their students in the coming generation. They were known as the successors. And those are called the Tabi'een. You have the Sahaba, which is the generation of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then you have the Tabi'een, which is the generation after the companions. And they were essentially the students of the companions. Sometimes those students might be their kids or their children, but in general, they're the students of the companions. The tabi'i is singular, and then tabi'een is the plural. Well, technically it's tabi'un, right? It should be tabi'un. After the companions. They're still the companions. That generation, because they're the same generation who they met the Prophet, believed in him, and died as such. So all of them, khalas, that generation, they're automatically companions. Then whoever's after them, meaning those people who did not meet the Prophet ﷺ, but they met the companions, studied under them, learned from them, and they're the ones who learned from the Prophet, they're called the successors, meaning the following generation. So the definition for them are, just simply put, the students of the companions. A tabi'i or the tabi'un are the students of the companions. All right. And then it says, they taught the Quran to their students, the generation known as the successors, who then taught it to their students using the same methodology employed by their teachers and the companions. However, as time passed, it became necessary that a proper way of interpreting and understanding the Quran also be preserved so that the Quran would not become a playground for people's own ideas, philosophies, and worldviews and desires. It was necessary so that people could not interpret the Quran as they pleased. The Quran is divinely protected, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Sister, I need you looking up here. Everybody should be looking up here, not staring off into space. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. It is certainly us who have sent down the Quran, Abdul Rahman, and it is us who will preserve it and protect it. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right? So the Quran is divinely protected, and part of that divine protection is to ensure that the original meaning and intent are preserved as well. So Imam as-Suyuti, right, and this is where we'll finish, and we're about to go on break. Imam as-Suyuti, he says, and he summarizes the methodology of how to interpret the Quran, right? And we're going to summarize it twice. His is a quote, and then we're going to take that quote and then summarize it. So if you're wondering, what should we write down? You're going to write down the summarization. So not his quote. You don't have to write down his quote. As you can see, that's like half a page. Oops. But we're going to write down the summary. Anyways, Imam as-Suyuti, he summarized this methodology by saying, the scholars have said, whoever wishes to interpret the Quran, he should first turn to the Quran itself. So that's step number one. Your first tool to interpreting the Quran, to explaining the Quran, is what? The Quran itself. And why is that? He explains. This is because what has been narrated briefly in one place might be explained in detail in another place in the Quran. So it might have, like, for example, Musa alayhi salam, he's talked about throughout the Quran in many different places. Some places his story is mentioned in brief, some places mentioned at length. The story of the Iblis, na'udhu billah minhu. Some places his story is explained in detail, and other places in brief. So if you read the place that's in brief, you would just go, if you want details of it, you would go where it was explained in detail. But you're still using what? The Quran itself. So that's step one. Then he goes on, that one place might explain in detail in another place, and what is summarized in one place might be explained in another. If he has done that, then he turns to the Sunnah. So this is step number two. For it is the explainer of the Quran, and it's clarifier. So how does he describe the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? That it's what? That it does what? Everybody. No. Everybody. What does the Sunnah do for the Quran? It's what? It explains and clarifies, right? And Imam al-Shafi, he said, all that the Prophet ﷺ said is based on his understanding of the Quran. And that's also taken from the Quran. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ Sudais, إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That he does not speak from his own desires, meaning Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but rather it is revelation that is revealed to him. All right. So when he explains something, when he elaborates, he's elaborating on the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, verily, we have revealed a book to you in truth, so that you may judge between mankind by that which Allah has shown you. And the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, I have been given the Quran. Inni u'titu al-Quran wa mithlahu, or al-kitab wa mithlahu. I have been given the Quran and something similar to it, meaning the Sunnah. If he does not find it in the sunnah, he turns to the statement of the companion. So now step 3 is what? Step 3 is what, y'all? Step 3 is what? Everybody needs to answer. Step 3 is what, Abdurrahman? Listen, if you don't know, say I don't know, when we can move on with life. You don't know, so stay with us. Don't go somewhere else. Step 3 is what, sisters? Going to the companions. Step 1, the Quran itself. Step 2, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Step 3 is what, Abdurrahman? Abdurrahman, step 3 is what? The companions. Stay with us, brother. So he said, if he does not find it in the Sunnah, he turns to the statements of the companions, for they are the most knowledgeable of it, since they witnessed the circumstances and situations the Quran was revealed in, and since they were blessed with complete understanding, true knowledge, and pious actions. Now, I said the red part you don't need to write down. I said we would summarize it afterwards. The summary here is now 6 sources of making tafsir. Step 1, the Quran. Step 2, the Sunnah. Step 3, narrations of the companions. Step 4, narrations of the successors. Step 5, Arabic language and poetry. Step 6, personal interpretation. We are not going to get into the last 2. We are simply looking at the first 4. Number 1 is what, everybody? Tafsir by Quran. Step 2, by the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Step 3, the companions. Step 4, the successors. And then the other 2, the Arabic language and personal interpretation. But look at that. All of that before you get to your, well, I think this means, and in my opinion, my personal idea is it means X, Y, and Z. Look at what you have to go through before you get to that. There's a whole process and what we called earlier a methodology. So now, Ustad Sudais, tell us, what are the 6?
Quran,
The Quran,
Sunnah,
the Sunnah,
companions have said,
what the companions have said, or the narrations of the companions,
companions, successor.
just the successors, just call them the successors, or the tabi'in. And that's considered 1, okay? Just make sure that's number 5.
Personal interpretation.
And personal interpretation, all right? And we'll elaborate or explain on that further, inshallah, tomorrow. And that should be brief. So it's just going to be 1, 2 more pages, because we're not going to explain all of them. We're just going to go through tafsir of the Quran by Quran. I just want you to have some examples of it. And then tafsir with the Sunnah and tafsir of the companions, and the rest we'll leave off. So just the first 3. You'll have examples, and we'll go through those tomorrow. So we're going to stop right now. You have a 5-minute break, inshallah. And then we'll come back and start with hadith. Yeah, and you're good too. You can go ahead, inshallah. All right. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك